Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are back with more. The executive branch. We're going to be finishing off the Washington presidency with the Department of Justice. Now, the Department of Justice was led by the Attorney General, and there was only an Attorney General under Washington, not necessarily an actual Department of Justice. The actual Department of Justice didn't come into being until 1870. So there was only an Attorney General for up through the Civil War. The Attorney General is the main advisor to the President on legal matters and chief law enforcement officer of the U.S. federal government. So he serves several important positions. He's the primary lawyer plus um, I guess you would say sheriff for the executive department. Now, or the executive branch, sorry. The actual Department of Justice is headquartered in the Robert F. Kennedy Department of Justice building. Now, the first actual Attorney General was Edmund Randolph. So, yeah, Randolph would later become the Secretary of State, or maybe, no, he started off as the Attorney General, but he would go on to be a Secretary of State. But let's go back over Randolph's information real quick here. He was born on August the 10th, 1753. He was educated at the College of William and Mary, studied law in the office of his father. With war around the corner, his parents, who were loyal to Britain, headed back to England in 1775. In 1775, Randolph, who went with them, comes back and joins the Continental Army as an aide-de-camp to General George Washington. In October of 1775, his uncle, Peyton Randolph, passes away, which required Edmund to head back to Virginia to serve as the executor of his uncle's will, or uncle's estate. He married Elizabeth Nicholas in 1776, then was one of 11 delegates to represent Virginia at the Continental Congress in 1776. Then went on to become a private practice lawyer. He would be elected as governor of Virginia, the 7th such governor, and was the first attorney general in 1789 to 1794, but would then take over as Secretary of State after Thomas Jefferson left and served from 1794 to 1795. After his stint in Washington, he would return to being a private practice lawyer before passing away on September the 12th, 1813. Now, the next person that would take over after Randolph would be William Bradford. Bradford was born on September the 14th, 1755 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to a uh, printer named William Bradford and his wife, Rachel Budd. Uh, the older Bradford, the father, printed and published the Weekly Advertiser, which actually served as a rival to Benjamin Franklin. You got to remember, Franklin was one of the big printers and scientists and all this during the time. So yeah, the older Bradford was a rival of his in the printing industry. The younger Bradford, uh, the actual William Bradford we're talking about, got his primary education at the Academy of Philadelphia. After he finished there, he then attended Princeton and graduated. He then studied law under Edward Shippen. He would then volunteer as a private in the Pennsylvania militia upon the outbreak of actual war in 1776. He served as an aide to Brigadier General Daniel Roberdeau and was promoted to brigade major. He then ended his time in the militia and joined the actual Continental Army as a captain. So remember, there was a primary army, the Continental Army, and then there was militias for the states. So he's went from militia to actual primary army. He joined the Continental Army as a captain. Would see action at the Battle of Trenton and would be promoted to lieutenant colonel. Was also at Valley Forge and eventually resigned due to ill health uh, before returning home in 1779. He went back and practiced law in Pennsylvania, then would be appointed the Pennsylvania Attorney General in 1780. Married Susan Vergero Boudinot in 1784. Appointed a justice on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in 1791. Before being appointed as the U.S. Attorney General by President Washington on January the 8th, 1794. He would die still in office as the Attorney General on August the 23rd, 1795. The last person for the Washington presidency we want to look at is Charles Lee. Lee was born January the 1st, 1758 in Leesylvania, Virginia, to Henry and Lucy Lee. He attended Princeton after his primary education in 1775. His father died in 1787 and his mother died in 1792, actually ending up granting Charles ownership of the Leesylvania plantation. Charles Lee would practice law in Alexandria, Virginia, served as the Alexandria city prosecutor, would be appointed clerk for the Common Council of Alexandria in 1785, and then appointed secretary of the Potomac Company in 1785. Would also serve as naval officer during this time for the South Potomac from 1777 to 1789. Would be appointed tax collector for the port of Alexandria 1789 to 1793. Would be elected in 1793, 1794, and 1795 by Fairfax County to be a delegate in the Virginia House of Delegates. Then would be appointed by President Washington as Attorney General of the U.S. in December of 1795. Served all of the rest of Washington's term and into John Adams' administration until February the 19th, 1801. After he left U.S. Attorney General office, he went back to being a lawyer and would eventually die on June the 24th, 1815, in Fauquier County, Virginia. But yeah, that will be the Department of Justice. And we'll finally finish up the Washington presidency and the departments under him. And that means when we do our next video on the executive branch, it will be our turn to look at the John Adams administration. But yeah, I'll go ahead and try to get this posted. I'll put my source links in the description below the video. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.